All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be talking about humanitarian and compassionate considerations
Uh,
in Canadian immigration law, so H&C as it's often called.
Sure.
We've got some really interesting source material for this one, a
Yeah.
real mix of stuff.
Mm,
We've got some government documents, some legal analysis,
right.
and even some real case studies to dig into.
Yeah.
So yeah, it should be pretty fascinating to see how these agency considerations actually play out in people's lives.
Yeah, it's really where the rubber meets the road.
Definitely, yeah, seeing the human impact of these legal decisions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of the cases,
Right.
let's make sure we all have the same basic understanding.
Sure.
So what exactly are humanitarian and compassionate considerations?
Oh, well,
When are they used and who can apply?
you can think of agency considerations as kind of like a safety net.
Right.
It's actually in Section 25 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. And it basically lets the Minister of Immigration make decisions based on, well, humanitarian and compassionate grounds.
So it's like they can grant permanent residency or even exempt someone from certain requirements if their situation warrants it.
Yeah, it's not the typical route to becoming a permanent resident.
Right. It's kind of like an exception
Yeah, exactly. It's an exception to the rule.
for really unique situations.
Exactly. Cases where the standard immigration classes don't really apply.
Makes sense. So it's about recognizing that sometimes there are human factors that the regular rules don't fully account for.
Right. It acknowledges that the rules don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where things get really interesting because you have this tension
Right.
between upholding the immigration system and making sure things are fair in individual cases.
So making sure the system is fair, but also compassionate.
Yeah, you've got it.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess that's where the case studies come in to
That's
show
right.
how this all plays out in real life.
Yeah, because these cases aren't just abstract legal concepts. They represent real people
Right.
facing deportation or
Yeah.
family separation.
Yeah.
Really tough situation.
Really high stakes.
Absolutely.
Now, before we jump into those cases,
Yeah.
I noticed our source material mentioned something called Operational Bulletin 21,
Right.
or OB 21. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. Operational Bulletin 21. It's basically a key document for understanding agency considerations.
Okay.
It gives really detailed guidance to immigration officers on how to assess these applications.
I see. So it's like instructions for them.
Yeah, basically, it lays out all the factors they need to consider, like
Nice.
the level of hardship if someone has to go back to their home country, how established they are in Canada,
Right.
family ties, best interest of any kids involved.
Gotcha. So it's a pretty important document.
It is. It helps standardize the process,
Yeah.
try to make sure decisions are consistent.
So there's at least some fairness and consistency in the decision making. Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Now on to the case studies.
Yeah, let's get into the stories.
It sounds like we have some really compelling examples to learn from.
We do.
And they really highlight the range of situations
Absolutely.
where agency can make a difference.
For example, one of the cases is about a woman from the Philippines
Okay.
who came to Canada as a live-in caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
She applied for permanent residency for herself and her family,
Right.
but she hit a roadblock.
Oh,
Yeah, her daughter has developmental delays
okay.
and might need special ed services.
I see.
And immigration authorities were concerned about that.
Because of the potential cost.
Yeah, they said it might be an excessive demand on Canada's health and social services.
Wow, I bet that was devastating for her.
It was, but her lawyer was able to argue that her daughter's potential need for special education
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't disqualify them.
Okay.
They pointed out that she'd be entitled to those services anyway.
Right, because she'd be in Canada.
Exactly, regardless of her immigration.
And the cost wouldn't be considered excessive under the legal definition.
Exactly.
So they really understood the nuances of the law
Yeah, they knew their stuff.
and were able to overturn the decision.
Right, and that's a really important point for anyone listening.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just have a sad story.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make a strong legal argument
Right.
showing how your situation meets the criteria.
So you need to understand the law and Operational Bulletin 21.
Exactly.
Starting to get the picture.
Good.
Okay, what's the next case?
Okay, this one involves another woman from the Philippines
Okay.
who also applied for permanent residency
Okay.
through the live-in caregiver program,
Mm-hmm.
but she accidentally left out the name of her oldest son on the application.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was an oversight.
A pretty big one.
Yeah, but she realized later
Okay.
and filed an H&C application.
So she was trying to correct the mistake?
Yeah, she wanted to demonstrate that it wasn't intentional,
I see.
called a misrepresentation.
Oh,
So yeah, this case highlights how important it is to be super accurate.
right. Dot your I's and cross your T's.
Exactly. Any inconsistencies can have serious consequences.
Yeah.
But it also shows that even when mistakes are made,
Yeah.
there might be a chance to fix things through an agency application.
It's not necessarily a dead end.
Exactly.
So in this case, was her application successful?
It was.
Wow.
It was ultimately successful, but yeah, it shows how important it is to review everything carefully.
And maybe get legal advice if you're unsure about anything.
Definitely.
Okay, definitely sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
Be super careful with the paperwork.
Yes. Very important.
Okay, I'm ready for the next case study.
All right. So this one involves another Filipina woman who came to Canada through the caregiver program,
Okay.
and her youngest child has Down syndrome.
Oh, okay.
But she wasn't initially found inadmissible based on potential excessive demand on health and social services.
Oh, that's interesting. So why did she need an H&C application?
Well, her agency application was based on the potential hardship
Okay.
that her family, especially her son, would face
Yeah,
if they had to go back to the Philippines.
right.
So her argument was based on Section 5.382 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act,
Okay.
which deals with potential hardship outside of Canada.
I see. So in her case, it was the potential lack of access to specialized medical care for her son.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
So even though she wasn't considered inadmissible at first,
Right.
there were still compelling humanitarian reasons for her to apply through the agency route.
So H&C isn't just about avoiding deportation.
Yeah, it can also be a path to permanent residency
Okay.
for people who would face serious hardship if they can't stay in Canada.
Even if they technically meet other requirements.
Exactly.
That's a good distinction.
It is.
So was her application successful?
It was.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, she was able to convince the immigration authorities that her family's well-being was really tied to staying in Canada.
So she really demonstrated the potential hardship.
Yes, and this case really shows how powerful that can be
Okay.
in an agency application.
Gotcha. These cases are so interesting.
They are.
It's amazing to see the human side of all these legal complexities.
Right, and we have even more to discuss
Okay.
that show just how many different situations agency considerations can impact.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, so this one involves a woman
Okay.
who entered Canada on a false passport.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a few years before applying for a permanent residency
Okay.
through the live-in caregiver program.
So that initial misrepresentation.
So it was a big obstacle.
Yeah, I bet.
In her agency application, she had to acknowledge it.
Of course.
But she also focused on the hardship
Okay.
she and her family would face
Right.
if they had to leave Canada after building their lives here.
Right. She'd really established herself.
Yes, she had put down roots.
Built a life, developed ties to the community.
Exactly.
So it sounds like she was arguing that,
Mm-hmm.
even though she entered under false pretenses,
Right.
she'd become a contributing member of Canadian society and deserved a chance to stay.
Exactly, and it worked.
Really?
Yeah, this case shows how powerful factors like establishment in Canada,
Mhm.
contributions to the community,
Right.
and potential consequences of family separation
Yeah.
can be in agency applications.
It suggests that someone's past actions
Yeah.
don't necessarily define their whole immigration journey.
Exactly. Agency considerations can offer a way for people to show they've changed and grown.
Right. Become valuable members of Canadian society,
Yeah.
even if they made mistakes in the past.
Right. It's a chance for redemption.
So are there any more cases?
We do have one more for this part of the deep dive.
Okay, great. What is it?
This one is kind of a roller coaster. It involves a woman
Hmm?
who initially hid a secret marriage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
On her permanent residence application.
Okay.
And she was later found inadmissible for misrepresentation.
Yeah, that's a serious issue, as we've seen.
It is. So what happened?
What happened?
Well, she was actually granted approval in principle for permanent residency
Okay.
on H&C grounds.
Wow.
But then during the second stage of processing,
Uh-oh.
she was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, wow. That's terrible.
Yeah. So she needed an H&C exemption from Section 38
Okay.
of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act.
Which deals with medical inadmissibility.
Yeah.
So even after she got past the misrepresentation hurdle,
Right.
she had this whole other challenge to deal with.
It's true.
So what happened? Did she get the exemption?
You know, our source material doesn't actually tell us.
Oh, wow.
But her case really shows how unpredictable these situations can be.
Definitely. Yeah, just when you think you've cleared all the hurdles,
Right.
a new one pops up.
It's true. And it's a reminder that we're not just talking about legal arguments and paperwork.
Right.
We're dealing with real people.
Facing really tough situations.
Absolutely.
And a lot of stress.
Yeah, it's a lot to go through.
It's a powerful reminder that every case file
Yeah.
represents a human story.
It does.
And sometimes a really difficult one.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, this has been really insightful so far.
I'm glad.
And I think we've got even more to unpack in part 2.
We do. We're just getting started. So welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. Part 2 of our deep dive into H&C, considerations in Canadian immigration.
I hope the case studies have given you all a better understanding
Yeah, for sure.
of just how nuanced this area of the law really is.
Definitely.
And the impact it can have on people's lives.
Yeah, they really highlight
Mm-hmm.
that each case is so unique.
They are.
But I'm starting to see some patterns
Yeah,
in what makes for a successful application.
that's a good observation. And,
Yeah,
there are some common threads,
right.
but each H&C application really is unique. It has to
Yeah.
be assessed on its own merits.
So for anyone listening who might be thinking about going down the H&C route,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways from what we've talked about so far?
What should they keep in mind?
Yeah, what are the big things?
Okay, well, first and foremost, thoroughness and accuracy are absolutely crucial.
Oh, yeah, we saw that with that case
Right.
where the woman accidentally omitted her son's name.
Yeah, even unintentional errors can have really big consequences.
Huge consequences, yeah.
So it's important to review every detail,
Yeah,
double-check everything,
yeah.
and seek legal advice if anything's unclear.
Yeah, I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah, having an experienced immigration lawyer,
Can really make a difference.
absolutely, they can help you understand the requirements,
Right,
gather the right documents,
yeah.
present your case in the most compelling way.
So it's not just about having a sad story.
Yeah.
It's about having a strong legal argument
Exactly.
and understanding the criteria in the law
Yeah.
and OB-21.
Yes, very important. And another key takeaway
Yeah,
is that H&C decisions, even with the best preparation, aren't guaranteed.
right. There's no guarantee.
Yeah, there's a degree of subjectivity involved.
Okay.
And the immigration officer has the discretion to approve or deny.
So even if you have a strong case,
Mm.
there's still uncertainty.
Yeah, that's right.
But I guess that doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Absolutely not. We've seen from the cases we discussed,
Yeah.
successful outcomes are definitely possible,
Yeah.
even in challenging situations.
So it's inspiring to see people who've advocated for themselves and their families
It is.
and been able to stay in Canada.
Yeah, and contribute to society.
Yeah, and it makes you think
Right.
about the importance of having some flexibility
Oh,
and
yeah.
compassion in the system.
Yeah, you need that balance.
Right, okay, so I'm curious.
Go ahead.
Are there certain arguments that are more persuasive
Yeah,
in agency applications?
that's a great question.
Like what makes a strong case?
Well, there's no magic formula,
Okay,
but certain factors definitely carry more weight.
like what?
For example,
Yeah.
demonstrating strong establishment in Canada.
Oh, okay.
That's often very important.
So things like home ownership,
Yeah, exactly.
a long work history,
Yeah.
involvement in the community.
Yeah, anything that shows you've put down roots.
Right, you're invested.
Exactly. That
Right.
you're not just passing through.
And that being forced to leave would be really disruptive.
Right. It would cause hardship,
Yeah.
not just for you, but
And-
for the community.
And what about family ties?
Yeah, strong family ties in Canada are another key factor.
Especially when kids are involved.
Right. Uprooting a child from their home,
Yeah, it would be so hard on them.
their school, their friends.
Their whole life.
Exactly. And Canadian law really values the best interests of the child.
So that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
So if I'm getting this right,
Mhm.
the strongest H&C cases usually involve a combo of things.
Yeah, like.
Establishment in Canada,
Yeah.
family ties,
Mm-hmm.
and potential hardship if they have to go back to their country.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
And if you can combine those elements with a compelling personal story
Yeah,
and a strong legal argument,
right.
then you have a much better chance.
That makes sense now.
Yeah.
What are some examples? Sure.
Of hardship, that would make a strong case.
Well, it could be lack of access to medical care
Okay.
in their home country,
Right.
or maybe a fear of persecution or violence.
Right, based on their religion or political view.
Yeah, or any other protected characteristic.
So it's about proving that returning wouldn't just be inconvenient.
Right.
It would be dangerous or even life-threatening.
Exactly. But it's not enough to just say that.
Right.
You need solid evidence.
Right, to back up those claims.
Yeah, which is why a lawyer can be so helpful.
Yeah, they can help gather that documentation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've been focusing on what makes a successful application.
Yeah.
But what are some of the misconceptions
Now that's a question.
about agency?
One of the biggest ones
Yeah.
is that it's a way to bypass the regular rules.
Like a backdoor to permanent residency?
Yeah, but that's not true at all.
Okay.
It's for really exceptional cases where humanitarian and compassionate reasons are really strong.
So it's not a free pass? No, it's a specific legal provision for unique situations.
Another misconception is probably that just having a sad story is enough.
Right, it's not.
Yeah, you need the legal arguments too.
Absolutely. You need to show how your situation fits the criteria in the law.
Not just tug at the heartstrings.
Exactly. It has to be legally sound.
So again, having a lawyer is really important.
They can make all the difference.
Okay, this is all starting to make a lot more sense now.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really getting a behind-the-scenes look at how H&C considerations actually work.
It is fascinating.
But it's important to remember that we're dealing with real people's lives here.
Absolutely. These aren't just abstract cases.
Right. It's families facing separation.
It's individuals facing hardship.
A lot of stress and uncertainty.
Yeah, the emotional toll is huge.
So we've talked about individual cases and the legal details, but I think it's also important to talk about the broader context of H&C.
Definitely. That's a crucial part of the conversation.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about that.
Okay, sounds good.
Now, I know Canada needs skilled workers.
Yeah.
Does that ever factor into H&C decisions?
That's an interesting question.
Like, if someone has skills we need, does that help their case?
Well, the primary focus is on humanitarian grounds.
Right, of course.
But Canada's economic needs can sometimes be considered.
Okay.
So yeah, for example, if an applicant has skills that are in high demand, it could strengthen their case.
So it's not just about what the applicant can get from Canada,
Right.
but also what they can give back.
Exactly. It's about finding a balance.
I see. So it's a balancing act
It is.
between showing compassion and also considering the needs of Canadian society.
Exactly. You have to think about both.
Yeah, and I imagine there's no easy answer.
No, not at all. Each case is different.
Right. Each one has to be looked at individually.
Absolutely.
Taking all those factors into account.
It's complex.
Yeah, it really shows the complexity of immigration law
It does.
and how important it is to understand all these different angles.
You need that nuanced understanding.
Right. Okay. Now, what about the ethical considerations?
Yeah, that's a really important aspect of agency.
What are some of the dilemmas that come up?
Well, one of the biggest ones is fairness
Okay.
and consistency.
Right, because there's that subjectivity we talked about.
Exactly. So how do you make sure that similar cases
Yeah.
are treated the same way?
That's a tough question.
It is. How do you prevent bias
Yeah.
from influencing decisions?
Right. It seems like it requires a lot of self-awareness
It does.
on the part of the decision makers.
And that's why we work so hard
Yeah.
to advocate for transparency and accountability.
Makes sense.
We want to make sure everyone has a fair chance.
Right, and that their cases are judged fairly.
Yeah, based on the facts.
Not on personal opinions.
Exactly, not on prejudices.
So you're really working to ensure fairness.
We try our best.
And justice within the immigration system.
We want to be a voice for those who might not have one.
That's really important.
It is.
So their stories are heard.
Yes, and their rights are protected.
And it brings us back
Yeah.
to the human side of immigration law.
It's so important to remember
Yeah.
that these aren't just files and legal arguments.
Right.
We're talking about real people.
With hopes and dreams and stories.
Exactly.
And often those stories involve incredible hardship
Yes, they do.
and resilience.
Yeah, people overcome so much.
And H&C considerations.
Mm-hmm.
They offer a chance at a better life.
They do. They're a glimmer of hope.
For people who might not have any other options,
Yeah, it's about recognizing their dignity.
even if they made mistakes in the past.
Exactly. Everyone deserves a chance.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point
It is.
to end this part of our deep dive on.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
Stay tuned, though.
Yeah.
We got more to come in part 3.
We're going to talk about where you can find more information
Yeah.
and how you can get involved in advocating for a more just and compassionate system.
So don't miss it. All right, welcome back, everyone, for the final part
Yeah, part 3.
of our deep dive into H&C considerations.
It's been quite a journey,
It has.
exploring all these different aspects.
Definitely feeling like we've gotten a really good grasp of how these considerations actually work.
Yeah, seeing how they can make a real difference in people's lives.
Yeah, offering a chance for a new start.
when it seems like there's no other way.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
We've looked at the individual stories,
Mm-hmm.
the legal complexities,
Right.
the social and economic factors.
Absolutely. It's all connected.
But what's the big picture here?
Yeah.
What role should agency considerations play
That's the million-dollar question.
in creating a balanced and equitable immigration system?
It's a tough one. You know? Policymakers and advocates are always wrestling with this.
Right. Trying to find that balance.
Yeah. Between compassion and upholding the law.
Right. Between helping individuals
And thinking about the needs of Canadian society as a whole.
Sounds like a constant balancing act.
It is. There's no easy answer.
No, and I imagine there's no one-size-fits-all solution either.
Absolutely not. Every case is different.
Right. Every situation has its own nuances.
Exactly. So I think the key is to have these open and honest conversations.
Okay.
To consider all the different viewpoints.
Right. To listen to the people who are actually affected by these decisions.
Yeah. Their voices are so important.
So it takes empathy.
A lot of it.
And a willingness to see things from multiple perspectives.
Absolutely. And it also takes a real understanding of the law.
Of course.
How it works, what it's meant to do.
And how it impacts people's lives.
Yeah. The human impact is crucial.
And it's about remembering that every person deserves to be treated with dignity.
Regardless of their immigration status.
Or their path.
Absolutely. Everyone deserves a fair chance.
So it's about seeing the person behind the case file, recognizing their humanity.
Yeah, and trying to create a system that's fair, A&D, compassionate.
Powerful stuff.
It is. It's a challenge, but it's worth striving for.
Definitely. This whole deep dive has really opened my eyes
I'm glad.
to the complexities of agency considerations.
It is a complex area.
And I'm really glad we had the chance to explore it together.
Me too. It's been great.
So for our listeners who want to learn more, where can they go for information?
Well, the Government of Canada website is a great place to start.
Okay.
It has tons of information on immigration, including agency considerations.
And I imagine they have the actual laws and regulations online, too.
Oh, yeah. You can find the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act and all that.
So people can actually read the law themselves.
Absolutely. It's all there.
That's great. And are there any organizations?
Yeah, there are tons of groups doing fantastic work in this area. For example, the West Coast Domestic Workers Association.
Okay.
They provide legal support and advocacy for immigrants and refugees.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of them.
They're doing really important work.
It sounds like there are a lot of resources out there.
There are. For anyone who wants to learn more.
Yeah. Or even get involved.
Definitely.
In advocating for change.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
The more we know,
the better we can advocate for a more just system.
Couldn't agree more. Well, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
It's been a pleasure discussing this with you.
Likewise, and I want to thank our listeners for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
And remember, keep those deep dives going.
Yeah, stay curious.
Keep learning.
And keep asking questions.
That's what it's all about.